So guys, we're here at Overland Expo West 2022. We have a super special guest with us, Mylo. I've just been catching up with Mylo here. I mean, you have like the craziest story. Nat Geo photographer. You've had this amazing philanthropical aspect of your career. Where did it all start?
It started with really just a crazy idea, honestly. Trying to figure out what do I want to do with my life and how can I make a contribution or a meaningful impact.
It's not a bad place to start.
Yeah, it's just like, what am I going to do? And as I analyze like, if I do this or if I do that, it just came down to the fact that regardless of what I do, I'm going to probably be helping somebody. And the second thing is I'm probably going to be solving problems in some way, shape, or form. And I think to a degree, we all do that, with our occupations and professions.
And a special thanks to Red Arc for supporting this podcast. Looking to upgrade your solar setup or get your adventure rig ready for summer? Red Arc is proud to announce their new foldable solar blankets available in 160 watts, 240 watts, and even 300 watts of power output. These monocrystalline blankets allow maximum energy absorption even without direct sunlight. Paired with genuine Anderson connectors for easy and reliable connectivity. Also available as a kit including necessary cables and a solar regulator for a turnkey solution for those beginning their solar journey. Red Arc's new monocrystalline folding solar blanket panels and accessories are perfect for complementing their existing line of fixed, folding, and solar blankets. For the ultimate off-grid power setup, pair Red Arc's new solar panels with their already popular range of dual in-vehicle or battery management systems, featuring next-generation battery charging technology and maximum power point tracking solar regulators, eliminating the need for a second regulator. And with built-in green power priority, it will select solar charging first, which means less of a load on your alternator. Red Arc's line of solar products have been torture tested in the rugged Australian outback and specifically designed for backcountry use, where efficiency, durability, and reliability are key to having an enjoyable and safe overland journey.
And if I remember, you started off by leading tours in Antelope Canyon and spending a lot of time out in nature. What was it about those early trips and guiding people into that beautiful part of the world that inspired you to take your own photographs?
It's a really funny story because I grew up, living off the land with my grandparents, and I recently looked on Google Earth to see how big the land was that we had, to where we had corn, squash, cantaloupe, just whatever we ate, and it's basically 12 acres, and so I've always been attached to the land from as far back as I could remember because it provided for us. And in the world of photography, it's really funny because the slot canyons are insanely beautiful, right? And so at that time, I would see people, this was days of film, 35 millimeter, medium format, 4x5, saw an 8x10 every now and then, but digital, the biggest sensor was 2 megapixels.
Sure.
I was like, whoa,
I know.
Was it the cameras that had the floppy disk that went in?
Yeah.
I had one of those.
Sony, I think, was the first one that whoa, I could put my photos in a floppy disk?
Yeah. So with photography, it's just I see people come in with big backpacks and tripods and flashes, which is real. You never want to use that inside the canyon for anything. Basically, it was I figured out where the nice colors were at. And essentially, I would just say, hey, you guys have all the gear and the light's really cool right here for 2 minutes. And then after that, we're going to go to this place over here. And then we have 30 seconds and then we'll have 10 minutes over here. Essentially, I just took people to these spots and I said, okay, y'all do your thing, step back and then go over here. And then afterwards, I would ask them, so how was it? And I always got two responses. The canyon itself was incredible, right? If you've been to a slot canyon, it's unforgettable of the human experience that people have. However, their experience behind the camera was totally different. Overexposed, underexposed. I couldn't get dialed in. As I was struggling. And the ones that had digital cameras, you could see their photos. His tripod was shaking and it was bad. And it was really kind of, to a degree, disappointment, And so then, we're here in Flagstaff, and at that time I called a bookstore here. I was like, hey, do you have any books about photography? And the guy was like, I've got one coming in. I think you'll really like it. It might be a month or two. So, all right, here's my number. Just call me. And I remember I was in the middle of nowhere going to Salt Lake, and my phone rang. And the guy's like, I got a book for you. And I was like, crap, I'm going to see this really hot chick. My job's on the line and I'm not getting any tips. And I asked him, well, how late can you be? Because from here to Flagstaff, that's 6 hours.
It's a long way.
I'll be there around 1 a.m. He's like, I'll be here. All right. Turned around, came back here, got the book. And it's a book about this big. And I looked through it. And the guy's like, this is one of the best books you'll ever like. I was like, cool. I opened it and it's like photos and a short paragraph, 2-liners. And I kept going. I was like, where's the lesson like about the math, aperture, shutter speed? And it was basically the range of light by Ansel Adams.
Oh, wow.
Okay.
And the first page was signed by him.
Oh, incredible. Incredible.
And the book, it was like $80.
Sure.
And I was like, for me, that was expensive,
That's a lot of money, sure.
Yeah. So I went through and there was not a single, like, here's how you set up your camera or instruction. However, I began looking at his images, and then afterwards I saved my money again and I went to a camera store in Phoenix, and all I could afford at that point was a spot meter.
Sure.
And the guy's like, here's how you use it. Here's how the dials work. And then I just went into the slot canyons and metered this, that. And I worked there for a few years. And so I had note cards like, okay, this light beam only comes in from July 2nd to July 5th at this time. And it's only available for 17 seconds. And that's it. So I was really dialed in. And then the confidence that I had was really kind of scary, because it's like, these are people that have a lot of gear. And if I tell them what, recommendations, how are they going to receive that, So I just, it's like, hey, for this next scene, here's probably what you want to do. Go to this ISO, this shutter speed, this aperture was what you got going on there. And let's try that. And then the guy was like, holy cow. He used other words, And then I was like, all right, this guy likes it. I'm going to go tell this guy, hey, this next spot we're going to go to, we're going to have like 5 minutes. I'm going to set you up over here. So I want you to rock right beside me. Once we get there, I'll set you up this way. And when we're there, I think these settings are going to help you, and just slowly, at the end of the tours, people were just like, holy cow, happy, about seeing the place. And then afterwards, they pull out their wallet and I got 20s, 50s, 100s. I'm like, oh yeah, this is it. I mean, that was really the case. I mean, for the first little bit, it was almost like a year of just, hey, we're going to go here. Y'all do your thing. We're going to go here. Y'all do your thing.
Yeah.
And then it just turned. And then TripAdvisor it's kind of new. And then people would write, oh, if you go to the canyon, you got to go with Mylo, So if you go look like Antelope Canyon, type in Mylo, you'll see hundreds of reviews.
Sure.
Like to this day, I mean, the last time I was working at the tour shop was probably, like 15 something years ago, and they still get phone calls. Can we go with Mylo?
Amazing.
So that's how it started.
You talk a lot about light in some of your articles that you've written and things like that. How do you see light today, now that you have looked at that Ansel Adams book and you've spent all of these years photographing? How do you see light today?
In the very same way. It's a source. There's a range of it, It's either really bright or it's really dark. Figuratively, when I go to like photograph like at night or in like the slot canyons where your shutter speeds are, 4 minutes, 8 minutes long, depending on your settings, it's amazing how just a little bit of light can really illuminate the area, and you're like, wow. And I think, for photography, that's what it really is being able to understand and control light is like my number one objective no matter where I go to photograph. And then secondly, it's a reminder that I think we all have a little bit of light, and that no matter how bright or how dim, I think we probably think it's really dim at most of our lives. However, even that little bit of dim light, just being kind to somebody, saying, hi, how are you?
Yeah.
I like your truck, or, you have a cool beard, or, just something that is positive and uplifting is like, man, I really needed to hear something. And you just don't know how much of a difference that made for me. On my way down to here, going through the canyons, there's this vehicle pulled over, and I saw the trailer had 2 jet skis. I turned around, pulled over, and there's a mom and 4 kids. And she said, yeah, nobody stopped here we've been sitting here for like over an hour. I said, yeah, it's probably because the roads are kind of windy, She's like, man, just you stopping alone just like made me feel so at ease.
Yeah.
I mean, they need a new axle, new bearings, whatever. It's just amazing how like being in a rush, I decided just to pull over for 5 minutes and see if I could. I couldn't do anything,
Just the act of kindness of stopping.
Yeah, just stopping and saying, hey, are you okay? Do you guys, is there anything I could do? But just that thing, I think that is something that we can do in different ways to bring that little bit of light to somebody.
Light's been a theme in some of your commentary, and you talk about a dream that you had of Monument Valley, and how it changed your life. Why don't you share a little bit about what that was?
Yeah, so a couple of days before my birthday, I remember waking up. I was dreaming, and I remember waking up at 2:14 in the morning in this vivid dream, and it felt so real, like I was there. And I've had a couple of those more spiritually happen in my life, and whenever those happen, it's like, okay, we're doing it, I mean, that was years ago, but I was like, man, I've got to go there, And so I go to this place overlooking all of Monument Valley, and you need a good rig to get up there because you're going through super soft sand and then you're slick rock and you're going up angles pretty steep. And then you get up there. That night it got super cold. So my birthday's at the end of April.
Okay.
And that night we got snowed on. And I'm just like, oh, it's windy, worse than this, Sure. And I was like, oh man. But the next morning, about 4:00, the sun, you could see a little bit of light, but it got really calm. And then by then, like around 5:00, you start seeing the tour vehicles, their headlights going through the park, but I didn't see any. I said, oh, what's going on? And then I just saw one of the most amazing sunrises, and I used my panoramic film camera to create the image.
Is it one of the Hasselblads?
It was a Tachahara.
Okay.
Yeah, Tachahara 4x5 back with in a panoramic setup. And then I called my friend. I was like, hey, how come I didn't see the school bus or tour vehicles? He's like, well, it snowed so bad that we're not allowed to go in, and so they cancel everything. And so usually by then you see dust, like a layer of that in the valley.
Sure.
But that image was so clear and so crisp. And
amazing.
Then that was in April. And then in August, had the largest fine art show for indigenous artists in Santa Fe. And I sold that print for a really nice paycheck.
That's great. Amazing, man.
It's like, it just come of that dream that I had and realizing that why did I have that, vision, that feeling, that impactful moment. And then I decided to act on it. And then it turned into believing that, okay, I can make a career out of this. Well, however, at that point, it's kind of the beginning of another lesson too, was I was really making really nice images and chasing the paycheck.
Yeah.
And that kind of died.
It's just amazing that you took that opportunity to take something that inspired you, like this dream, and you put it into action, and then you ended up with something amazing. So.
Yeah. I think that's kind of sometimes the scary point, right? It's like, oh, I've always wanted to go to this place, or, go apologize to somebody that I may have wronged in the past, or, just that little bit of inspiration that nudges us that, I think somehow it happens, and then it's up to us to proceed with it.
Yeah.
And I think those moments there can be really enlightening in different ways.
Yeah, no question.
I think one of the things we were talking about earlier was, the Gold King mine. I'd love to dive into that because it's fascinating to me that living in Colorado at the time, of the Gold King mine disaster, all you heard about was the water, the fish, whatever. And you had this totally different perspective on it and how it affected your family. There's always so many sides to a story. And it blows my mind that that's the story that we didn't hear. I would love for you to maybe elaborate on that conversation that we had a little bit earlier, so people know more about it. Because did you know about the whole Gold King?
Is that the one where they were
in the Animas River?
They were digging on the side of the slope, and all the water broke out.
Yeah, well, I went to school there in Fort Lewis in Durango.
Okay, yeah, my cousin went there.
Yeah, and so the Animas runs right through town.
Yeah.
And so I heard about it. I was like, holy cow, that's crazy. And I didn't know how massive it was of an issue until I started seeing that it continued to make its way into the San Juan River.
Yeah.
And right where that confluence is at, there's a lot of farmers right there. My aunt lives right there, a stone's throw from it. And then it started to become more of a serious issue when people were seeing it further downstream, around Bluff, Utah, around
a lot of people.
Monument Valley area, and then even more south all the way to where it comes into Lake Powell, which is that's quite a ways away.
Yeah.
And so it happened at a time also where a lot of, people were they had crops going, they had hay or whatever else. They were just ready to, to take for the season. And basically with all that mess, everybody lost access to the water. The people, the livestock, the crops, the wildlife. I mean, I've never seen a river turn, super yellow.
Yeah.
It was just crazy.
That's terrifying.
I saw a photo in the New York Times. I was a couple of people kayaking in it, but you think they're in corn pollen or something that's what's it called? Farina?
Yeah, something crazy.
Super yellow. It's you don't envision that.
It was not a natural color.
Yeah.
So you had the idea to throw a pallet of water on the back of your truck, and that just, that the goodwill that is the common theme through what we're talking about, that light, the small things that you can do just really spiraled. And I'd love to hear more about it.
Yeah. So I had an assignment to go out, and then I was also getting ready for my only photography show of the year, again in Santa Fe. I just built a little website. A lot of drag and drop, and I said, hey, if you buy this image, you'll get a file and you can print it an 8x10, it's just really 5, 10, and $20, increments. And I figured it's like, oh, maybe I'll just go to my big, store here locally in Salt Lake and then throw a big pallet of water so I can go take that down to a grandma, a grandpa, or a single mom or somebody that just could use water. Went away for 4 or 5 days, came back, logged in. I just remember telling, my wife's like, holy cow. And she's like, what's wrong? I was like, we have another problem. Because I did the math and the calculations. So my idea was basically to go get a truckload of water. It turned into being able to buy 7 semi-trailers of drinking water.
That's crazy.
So it's just like, at that point, that was the turning point, I think, in my career where I could use photography in a way that
to
I
make
never
the
had.
world better.
Yeah. And the other thing too is, when you look at 7 semi-trailers of plastic bottles, that we instituted a crazy, rigorous, strict, recycling process because we didn't want.
But that was the only way to really deliver it effectively.
Yeah. Nobody else was out there. No major natural disaster team was out there. It's just kind of grassroots, and to this day, they still.
Which is crazy to me.
And it affected a lot of people.
Yeah, over tens of thousands of people. It's just pretty wild. And so from that, that then sprouted is like going to visit these families who live, close to the river or out there. And then I would ask them, like, oh, do you have power or electricity? What's kind of the story about that? We don't know when we're going to get power or if we ever will. I was like, well, I'll be back in 2 weeks and I'll bring a solar kit. And
Respectfully, I think that a lot of Americans can't even comprehend that there are Americans that don't have power and don't have water.
Clean water
access.
Yeah.
Like, I'm somewhat aware of it, but after talking to you earlier, I'm just like, what?
Yeah.
Like it's 2022 where Jeff Bezos is sending himself up into space and this is still
people aren't able to get access to clean water.
Yeah. I think I get that quite a bit more regularly now. It's like, I was thinking about sending my kid to some other country, and is there a way I could just send them over to, the issues are somewhat similar. However, it's just right here in the Southwest of this country,
Yeah.
I think it's really eye-opening for a lot of folks that don't realize that what's going on. And, with the pandemic, all that really did was address the challenges we have for our elders. We call them the knowledge keepers,
okay.
And then also brought a lot more awareness of what the situation is.
Yeah.
However, it's just not like the Navajo Nation that's this way. It's almost every other indigenous tribe and throughout North America.
Why are people getting left behind? Like, what do you think is causing that?
The way some of the regulations are structured.
Okay.
To things like starting a business or being able to build a home. So I just went through this process, for example, to have a home site lease of 1 acre. Basically,
you said your home site was south of Page.
Yeah, on the Navajo reservation.
Okay.
It's along the Echo Cliff, so we have an amazing, beautiful view.
Beautiful area.
Yeah. However, I had to go through a 2-year process for them to clear that, and then I'm basically renting our land from the federal government for about the next 70 years. And after that, it goes back to them. So
does that seem a little messed up to anybody else out there?
Well, that's a big investment for you to build a home and everything.
Yeah. There are, things in place where I'm limited to be able to what I can do and what I can't do. The other thing too is that a lot of families, prefer not to move to like a neighborhood, right? Where you got neighbors, you can run a big water line in and electrical line in. However, it's like, okay, well, how do we then have our livestock, our culture, which is heavily based around, the land, the wildlife, the animals, and the language. And so a lot of that is really intricate, to be able to run, a water line from one home to another because we're not on a grid system.
Yeah.
The cost would just go through the roof.
Yeah.
And so some of those are just
so some of that I understand is just logistical hurdles, but I can't help. You get to lease the land that is rightfully yours from the government, and you can't own it.
Yeah, I
never knew that.
I never will be able to own it.
No matter how much you improve it.
No.
Yeah.
But I could buy a home here and say, this is my land forever, right?
Yeah.
Or our house in Salt Lake.
That's just that you have those aha moments and you start to realize, when you drive through Navajo lands, you notice that the quality of the homes isn't what you would see in another city or whatever. But I've just had that aha moment, and it's like, oh yeah,
that's
why would anybody invest into the infrastructure, or anything if in 70 years, what do they do? They just bulldoze, who knows? But
we'll climb over that fence when we get there. Yeah, it's quite wild. So yeah, there's a lot of improvement, and I think for me, I'm so optimistic. It's like, okay, we've got an issue, and what can I do to help be a part of the solution?
I mean, we were talking a lot about the kind of the philanthropic stuff that you're doing, to bring power with Goal Zero, not to be like commercial or anything, but I think it is cool that Goal Zero is kind of stepping up to the plate on that stuff. And then moving on from that, but. Let's talk about that on how you've used photography as this springboard. You started with the water, and now it seems like you have these projects coming up, and that and things that you're doing now that are just you're pushing even further.
With the great thing with Goal Zero, they've helped us power over 500 homes, and so later this year we're going to power another 100 homes right around when the kids are getting back to school. And so the big thing there was, personally, I grew up without running water or electricity. And so rather than do my homework, I'd rather make sure we have all of our lambs and our sheep and that coyotes aren't coming around because that's important to us, Yeah. And so with school and education, I fell behind. I mean, I remember doing my homework like in front of our wood burning stove or...
Education's great, but so is the essentials for living.
Yeah. So when you go somewhere, what am I going to eat tomorrow? How much more water do we have? And how much gas is in the truck? And when can we go make the next run to town?
Yeah.
Like those are always just naturally in the back of your head. Like you just don't stop thinking about that. And so when you get a homework or a project or, a scholarship opportunity, it's like, sometimes those things can take a back seat, And so, so fortunately over the years, we've been able to, since 2015, actually the week right after we did the water delivery, Goal Zero said, hey, we would love for you to come down because when we go visit these grandmas and these grandpas, we don't speak Navajo. We haven't found anybody that could help us translate how, a solar panel, cables, lights, how the power turn things on.
How it all works.
Yeah. And so I went down and it was just amazing. And then I asked them, what can we do to do more of this? And then we began putting ideas together. And then recently, we started using bigger 400 watt system solar panels and then 1500 watt batteries, which is huge.
Which is enough to power the kids' Chromebooks that they're coming home from school.
Chromebooks. And we recently partnered with Domedic. So now there's families that have a refrigerator.
And so they can keep food longer?
Yeah. So they keep food longer, they eat healthier. And
you just don't think of these things. Like, I'm not trying to dwell on it, but the disparity between the quality of life,
these are real problems that are being solved.
I mean, maybe this is what makes a great podcast, but I'm just so curious about this because you don't hear these stories. You don't hear people talking about this stuff. Most people, when they experience Navajo lands, it's something that they're blowing through to get to Lake Powell with their boat, or they're towing their rock crawler to Moab, and it's like, oh, I don't want to stop here. I don't want to do this, but they don't actually have any frame of reference as to like why there are issues, what's causing them, and as you're saying, just that little bit of light on anything can just help bring people together and understand what's actually happening.
Yeah. And how do people find out more about what you're doing with providing water and power and the refrigerators? Do you have a website that people can refer to?
Yeah, absolutely. They can go to heartofamerica.org. Heart of America is it's a nonprofit based out of DC. It's really about providing education transformation spaces, addressing the inequity in education. And so we work with a lot of schools across the country with like NBA teams, NFL teams.
Awesome.
One project I worked on is in Baltimore, which that's kind of a tough area too,
Sure, yeah.
And in a day with a bunch of volunteers, and none of the players were there, but like staff, trainers from the Ravens came, and in a day we planted over, I think, like 75 trees. We built 2 outdoor classrooms and just put in amazing like outdoor lawns where
amazing.
It's like this really, it's like a school just got a crazy facelift, and the kids and the teachers were just like, this isn't the same place anymore, And so out here, it's kind of really going back to the basics of providing power so that a kid can do light, under, a solar lantern as opposed to
like
kerosene, which is
you
not
don't
that
think
healthy.
of those things. Yeah, like you've got the kerosene lamp going, which then costs money. You can't do your homework if you don't have light because you can't see.
Yeah,
like it's those little things.
Or charge the Chromebook,
or
charge the Chromebook.
Whatever, but you have those. Most people consider them small things like lights or this or whatever. Well, then you're like, then you start to make the connection of how everything really is connected. You can't do the homework if you don't have the power. No refrigeration. I can't imagine living in my Jeep without a refrigerator.
Yeah.
And they have to deal with day to day that way.
Every day. Last year it was
it's just a reality check to how easy particularly in this space, how easy a lot of people have it. Wow. It's just one of those things that
pretty amazing.
Yeah. It kind of makes you think of what I think also at the same time of what we do have access to, I live in Salt Lake and I'm always grateful for, what we do have there, and remind our kids of you're in the 3rd grade right now. However, you look at kids the same age as you, go back home, those kids are at least 2 to 3 grades behind.
Sure.
And now 2 9-year-olds, there's a 4-grade difference between the two. They're falling a little more behind. And so that's what we're really excited about, is to bring that opportunity up, because they are the future. They're going to be the ones finding solutions for us when we get older in some way, shape, or form. And so to be able to provide them an opportunity to kind of make it somewhat equal as possible is just really a fun mission. So Heart of America, we work together with Real Salt Lake. We install solar kits on a dozen homes around southern Utah. And then that just grew and grew. And then Solve Energy, if you go towards Monument Valley, there's a big solar farm there.
I saw that.
Yeah.
It's just on the south side of the road.
Yeah, just right there.
Buttes.
They reached out and they said, hey, we've got this check that we can give to a nonprofit. So whenever you start yours, we'll send it over to you. And then the pandemic happens, and I'm like, okay, my bandwidth just got to 0.
Sure.
However, could we send that check to over here to Heart of America, and we still do the same thing because we're now addressing education, and that just took off like crazy. And
that's amazing.
Yeah. So during the pandemic, we delivered over 10,000 distance learning kits, Goal Zero solar lanterns, already powered about 100 homes. With the bigger Goal Zero batteries and the Dometic refrigerators. And so it's just, the next thing now is going to be internet. So my vision is how can somebody living...
We've got a few SpaceX employees that...
Yes, exactly, yeah. I've got a kit.
Yeah.
So I've got a friend who has access to that internet in just south of Navajo Mountain. And he's like, it works.
It's unbelievable.
That, I think, is going to be the next, try to figure that out, because our kids, they read books, watch educational things from their school, because we got Wi-Fi in our truck, and they do all their homework right there whenever we're out camping. And they continue to get ahead that way, And so to give a kid that same opportunity is just, I can't wait for that day.
It changes everything.
It does.
Well, one of the things that's really neat about your history is working with National Geographic. For me, it's always been a publication and an entity that I've admired. So talk a little bit about your experience with National Geographic, what projects you've done with them.
I got an email from them and I just ignored it. I was like, this is spam,
This cannot be real.
This is not, no way, this is junk. Yeah, whatever.
They're trying to get me to sign up for a magazine subscription.
2 weeks went by and then they reached out again. I was like, all right, this is real, because I replied back. And then they wanted me to contribute on the adventure side, more like overlanding, show trucks. And I was like, okay. And I said, I've got this idea where I'm going to compress an image with a 600 millimeter lens with the biggest full moon of the year. We're going to be at the Bonneville Salt Flats. I'm going to open up my rooftop tent and then put the moon right in that hole. And it was so that's where apps and technology came in. I was like, okay, where do I need to be? Degrees and angles and shutter speed time, And that was just so fun to pull off. And
kind of goes back to the canyon of we have 17 seconds of light here.
Oh,
we have to move here for 4 seconds.
There was a reason why you learned all that.
It is. And even with my film, when I go out photographing nowadays, my light meter anymore, because when I had that light meter for 3 years, I made probably over 20,000 note cards of I'm here and I'm metering this. Here's the weather, the situation, the clouds, the light. If I had a camera, here's what my settings would be. And I just really memorized those. So now when I go out, it's just like, okay, here's kind of the light situation we're in.
You're your own light meter now.
Yeah.
You look at it and you know.
Yeah,
you're the one person that can use like an old school like an M2.
Yeah, it's fun. But an experience that I had with Nat Geo was really one that heightened my, I think, sensitivity to the images that I create. And I sent a handful of images to them, and they just said, for what we want to put out there, your images are just a little soft, meaning like a little out of focus. And I was like, wow. How did they see that? Like, how did they find that? And it just made me it made me become more aware of what am I focusing on? And how is that and my approach to photography to create great images that they would happily use and share and allow me to write about. It's an amazing opportunity that came my way. And I always say, I'm a kid that grew up in a home no bigger than these chairs right here.
Yeah.
It's probably 600 square feet. And I think sometimes I still feel like I don't matter because I come from nowhere.
Yeah.
And nowadays I love to say that create great work, create images, and you just never know who it's going to impact, because I think to say thank you to somebody, it takes energy or courage to genuinely say, I was inspired by that. We're shy about that, I think, as people, right? Maybe. I try to do that more. And whenever that happens to me, I always try to, establish a relationship and, return that gratitude for them taking the time to look at my work.
Well, your work is beautiful. Some of those images of that place, which is one of my most favorite places on the planet. Southern Utah and Northern Arizona, every time I go through there, it completely captivates me. To see the work that you've done there, it just makes me realize that I've got so many levels to go of my own work. When I see work like you've done, it's just absolutely incredible. You drive a Nissan.
I do.
Yeah. So talk a little bit about your overland truck.
So I've got a 2020 Nissan Titan. It's a Pro 4X. Got it before dealers had it. Had a really great opportunity and built it out. So I'm running 35s from General Tires X3s, Thule rooftop tent, awning, a Dometic CFX 75.
Big fridge.
Yeah, kids need ice cream out in the middle of nowhere.
we all need ice cream.
And that's the coolest thing.
The biggest flex is like you're in the desert and then you walk into somebody eating an ice cream.
Oh yeah,
it's totally the biggest flex.
It is, yeah. And then when you're at a campground and we're making cotton candy, it's like we bought this little cotton candy maker for our daughter. Yeah, it's a really fun truck, and I love using it for so once a month we try to take so we have two kids, Denali, and so once a month I'll take one kid, my wife will take the other, and we'll go overnight, do something, and the kids are always like, let's go camping, but we put that responsibility on them. Okay, what do we need? What's the weather? Which way's the wind blowing?
Sure.
What are we gonna have for breakfast, lunch, dinner? And they're part of it, I load it, and then when we get out, and 100% like a bonding moment, where we talk about like important things, wild horses, squirrels, the environment, or constellations, and one question I always ask them every single time is, Bubblegum, how can I be a better dad? Or to my son, I'll say this.
I don't know how many parents ask that question.
It's a scary question because these kids will tell you, and then say,
that's
okay,
amazing.
We'll tell you what from this
aha moment. It's like, not a lot of parents ask that question, but maybe they should.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what are some of the things that you'd like to share that you've learned from that?
Practice soccer with me more.
Yeah.
Help me a little bit more with my homework.
Sure.
Teach me more Navajo.
Yeah.
Like one of my funner ones with my daughter, just how I know it's been too long is like, if I'm not somewhere with painted nails,
Sure.
I look at my hands, I'm like, it's been a minute.
Yeah.
It's been too long.
Sure.
And so my daughter, we just FaceTime yesterday, and she's like, cause she knows I'm here and what this event's about. I said, Dad, when you come home, can we go camping?
Yeah.
It's been a while.
That's great.
I
Awesome.
said, yeah, that's a big indicator, is like, how long do I have like pink nails or my toes or whatever, it's just fun. It's really innocent moment where
it's wonderful. Yeah.
You're there with another human being. You're there with another soul that's thinking things, and they're reacting to their surroundings and their own environment. And it's just like, the most beautiful thing to see them blossom, you know. In return, I'm also led to figure out like, how can I be a better, role model to them? And then we make goals together, look at our accountability. We talk to them about important things about where, to their age group, how they can also be, like this morning, say, hey, be a friend, be kind, and have a blast. Yeah. Like, that's our daily rule. Every day when we go to school, be kind, have fun, and be a friend to somebody. Yeah. And so
we could all get that advice more often.
For sure.
Yeah.
This content is brought to you by Overland Journal, our premium quality print publication. The magazine was founded in 2006 with the goal of providing independent equipment and vehicle reviews, along with the most stunning adventures and photography. We care deeply about the countries and cultures we visit and share our experiences freely with our readers. We also have zero advertorial policy and do not accept any advertiser compensation for our reviews. By subscribing to Overland Journal, you're helping to support our employee-owned and veteran-owned publication. Your support also provides resources and funding for content like you are watching or listening to right now. You can subscribe directly on our website at overlandjournal.com.
For sure.
Yeah, and they remind us whenever we go driving, like, oh, Dad, you're gonna pull over. They got a flat. I got an impact. I've got a Toyota jack. Yeah, and it's just amazing how like it takes 3 minutes to help somebody, and you never know who you're going to pull over and help too.
Yeah. Well, I've got one more question on the kid thing before Matt's question. But so your daughter's name is Denali.
Our son is Denali.
Your son's name is Denali.
Our daughter's name is Aurora Winter.
Now you spent a lot of time in Alaska. So what inspired you to name your son Denali?
There's one major inspiration that came from that is in the early 1900s when the weather was a little bit different. My great grandmother, she lived with us in her late age. In early 1900s, she saw the Northern Light back home, like an hour and a half north of here. And I just remember her talking about the colors, the movements, the swiftness of it, and then also the sacredness of it as well, and the prayers that she offered, the offering that she made, the songs that she sang about our relatives of the North, the holy people of the North. And I just never forgot that because I was a little kid and she explained everything, which is so much more descriptive in our own language, the Navajo. I never forgot it. And so when we found out that we were going to have a daughter, I said, I want to tie her name forever to that story from my great grandma. And that's where we got Aurora Winter. We mostly call her Bubblegum. And then Denali was the significance of the naming of Mount McKinley going back to Denali. Yes. And then it meaning the high one or the grand one or the tall one, in terms of like height, but also impact in terms of like, what does that name mean to you? So my best friend married a gal that's half Tlingit and half Lumbee, which is not a federally recognized tribe in North Carolina. And so we would go to Alaska a lot. And I remember the first time I went to Alaska was with my 4x5 and my burlap bag wooden tripod. And I took 4 plates, 4 slides. And I spent 2.5 weeks up there and I came back with 4 photos. That was it.
Amazing.
It was just so pure. And it was in June. And I was like, man, this sunset is lasting like 5 hours.
I know.
This is crazy.
I know. It's wonderful. Yeah. It's truly wonderful. Yeah. And the further north you get, it just kind of laps around.
Yeah, it doesn't go down. It's hard to sleep.
Yeah.
And then...
and Matt's about ready to go to Alaska.
Yeah,
so
I leave on the 10th.
Oh, wow.
So we're going to go all the way up to Tuktoyaktuk. And then I'm going to be gone for 2 months. I know I'm heading north. That's what I know.
Jeez.
So
you're going to have a fun time. If you ever get a chance to go, I say go in the winter.
Okay.
I photographed the Northern Lights about 2 hours north of Fairbanks. And when I remember it was -50 and open the door in like 2 seconds, everything freezes. Like your clothes will just get like hard. Your nose will like freeze and it's like hard to blink, And it's just one of the most like unearthly moments I've had. And
the aurora is something special.
Yeah. So, and I recently saw it in Iceland on another assignment with Sony. And so it's amazing. It really is. Yeah.
You had an interesting, when we were chatting earlier, you were telling me about the Navajo family structure. There are no cousins. I had never known that or heard that before. And I feel like people just want to know that everyone's a brother or a sister, or your aunt is your mother.
Yeah. So whenever we are in a setting like this and we introduce ourselves, we always say, Yate abene, which is like good morning, or referencing the time of the day, Yate shikedo shidne, which basically means hello, my relatives and my people. And so there's no real division amongst being what we say the holy five-finger people. It's so in our culture, like our kids will call my sister, in your arrangement would be their aunt, right?
Yeah.
But for us, it's Shema, my mom. So we don't have cousins. So whenever, like, a lot of my cousins' sisters served in the military, but I always say my sister served in over here, over there, or that's just our family structure, and it's all based around like this kinship of kek, which is our relationships of who are we with this next person here that's sitting, regardless of where they come from or regardless of their background or beliefs and whatever. No matter what, you are my relative, because when you take a step back, we are all on the only place we'll all ever call home one time, right? This red earth under Father's sky. And why should we, be something else besides relatives when we call this home?
Second time I've gotten goosebumps on this podcast.
Yeah, me too. I'm right there with you.
I just feel so now I just feel like terrible, like the amount of times I've driven through your lands and I don't even know how to say hello. Yeah. I don't know any of that. I mean, where can people learn more about the Navajo language and, customs? Like, 'cause it's just not taught.
Yeah.
I mean, it's on our doorstep, like in northern Arizona. It is
so close to us.
It is. I mean, it is. It's this.
It's right here. I mean, San Francisco Peak. That's our western sacred mountain.
And it's not supposed to be called San Francisco Peak. I was reading right, because that was.
What's the original name for that?
So it'd be the Costly. We have this Mount Hesperus, Mount Taylor, and Mount Blanca.
Okay.
And then we have the Colorado River, and so really like this is our holy area that when we leave that area, we come back with the goodness.
Yeah.
And we come back with stories and knowledge. I remember whenever I grew up by Marble Canyon, above it on the Echo Cliffs. And so my grandpa, he'd always say, hey, let's go crazy today and let's go to Marble Canyon and get a Pepsi and an ice cream. That was my grandpa going crazy for the day. And I just loved it because anytime we crossed the Colorado River, he'd always take off his hat. And he said, a couple of our relatives helped build this bridge in the 1920s. And two of them floated away and they were never found ever again.
Wow.
They risked our lives so that we could traverse this canyon a lot faster and easier. And he'd always offer a prayer whenever we left home.
Wow.
Even if it was to go get a can of soda and ice cream. Yeah. And then he would come back and say, hey, we're always, grateful for protecting us. And that's, one thing that we always do in our family whenever we're coming back, like by Page. Page isn't technically on the Navajo reservation anymore. However, before it was on Navajo land. And so, you can go online, with YouTube, social media, there's a lot more opportunities to learn Navajo words. And even the word like yate, which means hello in English. However, in us is, again, going back to like, I am here with you in this sacred universe. That's the literal like translation of how we say hi.
And that's yate?
Yate. Yate, yeah.
Like your kids' names are so thoughtful. Like,
they're so thoughtful, yeah.
Like, did they just choose our names out of a book?
Totally. Like out of a hat. I think I was named after a horse.
This guy's even named Matt. This guy's Scott.
Yeah, totally.
And then for me, like both of us, let's just give them 3 first names.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, the funny thing,
have 3 first names, Scott and I. It's
somehow.
The funny thing about my dad is his birth certificate is totally incorrect. So his name is James, but his name was totally, I forget what his real Navajo name was. They basically looked into the Bible and said, hey, you're James. That's how they got his name. Was that. And then my great grandmother, the same one that taught me about the Northern Lights, she delivered my dad. So on my dad's birth certificate, it shows that he was born in April. And so years went by. I asked my great grandmother, like, Grandma, was my dad born in April during the season? She's like, no, he was born during this time. The lambs were this age, the juniper were looking like this, the sage were turning colors, the wild grass were already turning yellow. And she based my dad's birth under, around the the environment and nature. And it's fun to go back to the very tree that my dad was born at. And so, April is a 4, right? January being 1, April's 4. What had happened was somebody initially put 9, which is for September, and the recorder put a 4 instead of a 9 because my grandmother says, your dad was born in this month in September. On his birth certificate, it shows that he was born at Tuba City Hospital when he was born at our summer camp. My grandmother washed him with snow after he was born.
Amazing.
So, pretty wild story.
So cool. Well, Mylo, we're going to run out of time here.
Oh, yeah.
You are an inspiration, man. Thank you so much for being on the podcast. So,
absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Thank you.
And we thank you all for listening. We wish we had some time for questions, but we'll have another one tomorrow at 1 o'clock. So,
okay. Be good. See ya.